We've all been there before. We just got paid, we have our money, but we have to budget. And if a new keyboard is in question, how much can we budget? And if we got to be on the affordable side, what can we do about that? And if you're like some, where budget keyboards are like a gift from God and sent from the heavens, or like others, where they simply should be sent to the trash pile, that's something I'd like to talk about. So today, let's talk about it. So to discuss this topic, I wanted to take a look at the Xinmeng M87 Pro. This is a $30 bare bones keyboard with not many frills, but just an entry option for people wanting to get into the hobby or people that might be on a budget but want something custom. Now starting, the box is rather light, as in I'm not sure if a keyboard is in here light. But opening up does reveal there is a keyboard in here. So we're off to a good start. Now, the M87 comes with your standard manual, and it says here that it also comes with software, as you can state here, software. Now, honestly, I don't have high hopes for the keyboard, but I also don't want to go ahead and classify it as e-waste or just something that's going to head to the trash pile. I am building this with a purpose to give it to a friend that's in need of a keyboard. But I wanted to see what options are out there for somebody that is on a budget and wants to get into this hobby. Starting off, it's a rather nice looking keyboard. Granted, it doesn't have any crazy frills, but it is a gasket mounted, polycarbonate plated, bare bones keyboard. It's a really good starting point. When you flip it over, the back has a really nice design. It's really clean. It's aesthetically pleasing. I really like these rows. It has dual stage flip up feet. There's plenty of rubber so it doesn't slide around the desk. So we're off to a pretty good start already. Now, if we flip it back over, you can also see that it has on and off switch. It has a USB-C port and it's a Windows Mac compatible. That's a pretty hefty package for a $30 entry point. I'm really excited to jump into this and I'm really excited to build it. So without further ado, let's do it. Let's figure out how to get into this $30 TKL that may be good, may be bad. Now, examining the edges, I don't really see any screws. I don't see anything that holds it together. So I'm just going to start by trying to pry it apart with my hands. And oddly enough, it just kind of comes apart. You can feel the clips in there, but they're not so secure that you need to struggle to get them off or need a pry tool. You kind of just pull them towards you or pull them away from their clip facings, and it comes right off. And for me, this is kind of a win. When you have somebody trying to get into a hobby and wanting to spend money on a new hobby, you don't want the barrier to entry be so high. You don't want that wall to kick them out. You want them to feel invited. And so far, this is pretty inviting. And when I pop it open, it's even more inviting. You can see here that it is silicone gasket mounted. It's going to provide really good bounce when you're typing and a really good typing experience. When we pick it up, we can flip over the plate and the PCB itself. You'll see that it has connections straight into the daughter board. Everything looks no frills in here. I like this. This is kind of unexpected for a $30 keyboard. I've built $30 keyboards, many in my time, that don't have foam, that for sure weren't gasket mounted. And oddly enough, it's really pleasing to see that this is an option for $30. Now here, you can see that the board is hot swappable. It's 3-pin, 5-pin hot swap sockets, and it's got south-facing RGB. It's got tons of foam, including one regular switch foam pad, and then it's got a silicone pad underneath it. I'm surprised the weight of this keyboard is so light because there's a lot of stuff already in this keyboard. Now, I do wonder why there's a weird cutout, and I assume it's because there's an option for this that comes with a battery. Now, I'm not too sure what to do with this cutout. I think we're going to try to find something to put in the cutout, but I really wish that companies that don't have a model that has a battery change the silicone or foam or whatever their insulation is so that way it doesn't look so out of place, and also so it doesn't provide an uneven typing experience or sound experience. But nonetheless, I'm pretty sure I have some scraps from other builds, which I do here, and we'll go ahead and trim this down to size, and we'll fit it in here in this hole. Granted, it's not the same material, and I would like it to be, but I think it'll do its purpose. This is just sound absorption foam that you usually see in cars, but I use it for keyboards a lot, and it's pretty easy to trim, and it's got a sticky backing if you want to stick it to the bottom of a case. So it'll be pretty easy. Grab scissors and trim it down to size. If you want to remove this whole thing, you're more than welcome to. You can put EVA foam in it, you can put erasers in it, you can put whatever you want back here. But I think this will do for now. So with that, we'll go ahead and set that aside, and we'll focus on our plate and our PCB. Now, the first thing I want to know is how we get this apart. Is it held in by pegs or screws? So we flip it over, and we notice there are some screws. Now, we want to double check just to make sure there's no other clips or anything like that before we start unscrewing things, which for this, there isn't. So we'll just locate every one of our screws, we'll grab our handy dandy sonic screwdriver, and we'll get to unscrewing. These are your simple Phillips screws. They're no weird sizes, doesn't take anything unique. Just grab a small Phillips screwdriver, and you'll be good to go. It's pretty simple, but there are quite a few. So remember, if you're trying to take this apart and it doesn't come apart really easy, just double check you got all the screws out. It's really easy to miss one in this sea of switches, but once you're sure you got them all out, then all you have to do is simply lift it off. And voila, now you have your PCB and your plate separated. So flipping it around, we can definitely see that we have south facing RGB, and we can see our 5-pin, 3-pin hot swap sockets. Again, this is a $30 barebone keyboard. There's plenty of RGB, and it looks like there's some additional on the side here. I'm assuming it's for the little bar that's above your arrow keys. And honestly, I thought it was going to be some cheap looking PCB, but it seems pretty nice. Now focusing back on the plate, we can also see that we have switch film, pad, and foam, which again is a really nice touch. It's not a standard thing at this price point. There are keyboards out there that have this at this price point, but they're not always there. It's not a standard practice. So I do love to see this. And if we flip back over, we check our stabilizers and they're actually lubed. Which again, I've had keyboards twice this price that didn't have lube stabilizers. So for the sake of curiosity, we're not going to change these. I want to see what they sound like stock. Next up, I'm going to head back to my PCB. I'm going to go ahead and do a tape mod. I'm not going to do a ton of tape, as in I just want to do one layer. My standard is usually 2 to 3 layers, but I just want to do one layer for this. I think this will help the sound and make it cohesive across the board. But if you're doing this, make sure you avoid your connections so you don't cover those up so you don't have an issue. Also, while I'm here, I'm going to pre-make all of my holes so I can screw everything back together nice and easily. This is up to you, but I find it easier if you do it this way. Once you're done, you can go ahead, assemble this all back together, and we'll move on to the next step, which you guessed it, is more assembly. So we're going to go ahead and put our foam back in our case here, and then we'll grab our PCB and our plate. We're going to go ahead and make sure that you plug the keyboard back in. I forget to connect my PCB to my daughter board more times than I would like to admit, so don't be like me. Plug it in. There's nothing like getting all the way done and forgetting that you didn't plug it in and then have to take it all the way apart again. It's pretty simple. These connections are really easy compared to a lot that I've worked with. You just get them lined up and then just plug them right in. Remember, the easiest way is to have it tilted vertically like this with it draped over the back of the keyboard case. This will allow you enough space to plug it in easily and unplug it easily. Once you're all plugged in, align up your gaskets, and you're good to go. Now you're ready for your top case. Go ahead and grab the top, and then we're just going to firmly align it up and press down. Really simple. You'll hear it click into place. Once you hear the click and you feel like it's secure, go ahead and pick it up, and then we're going to run around all the edges just to make sure it's securely fastened all the way around. If for some reason you're at this portion and a part won't fasten, or it looks to be bowing, just make sure you back off and then re-examine how much foam or material you have inside the case if you changed any, or make sure it's aligned properly. You don't want to force it back into place or have any weirdness like that. But once you do and you're secure, you're ready to move on to switches. And for me, I'm going Gateron Browns. And I know, Gateron Browns, one of the controversial switches. Brown switches get a bad rap. Some people love them, some people hate them. It started with cherry browns. But lubed Gateron Browns are some of my favorite switches, especially for a budget build. And yes, these are pre-lubed. I did lube them by hand, all of them. So don't come for me in the comments. But a little bit of specs about them. They have a polycarbonate top housing, a nylon bottom housing, and they're a 55 gram tactile switch. And honestly, when they're lubed, I love them. Probably because they're one of the first switches I've ever lubed. But regardless, once you get them all on the keyboard, it's now time for keycaps. And that's right, we're sticking with the budget theme. These are a budget set of PBT XD profile keycaps. And they're beer themed. That's right. Just like beer, these came in the box kind of upside down and backwards. I'm not really too sure what that means, but I think you get the gist. These were a really budget-friendly choice for a friend that is a beer drinker. He likes his fancy assorted ranges of beer, so I thought, what better yet to build him a keyboard that features beer. The colors are really good, they're nice and vibrant, they are edge to edge. Some of them are a little bit more faded than the others, and then there's also a little bit of stem play in some of them, but the inconsistencies are very slight. And honestly, I think these were about $10, so I don't have a lot of room for complaint. Putting it all together, I think it makes for a really nice looking keyboard. Now, the switches were about $10, the keycaps, same thing, and the keyboard was $30. So we're in for about $50, which there's other keyboards in that price range that will totally do this for you. But this keyboard is a theme that we wanted, and it was a layout that we wanted. So that's a win. So next, let's look at software. This is Xinmeng Keyboards. This is where it told us to get the software from. So we scroll down, we look for our keyboard, hope that we don't get hacked or any viruses. Once we find it, we download it and install it. Once I have it installed, this is what it looks like. You're met with a keyboard that resembles the one you just built. Once you get into the software, you'll go ahead and go to the cog setting wheel and change the language to English. Default is Chinese, but we're going to go ahead and pop it over to English because that's what we speak. The key response time, not too sure what it does. It didn't seem to change or update anything when I selected it. So first we'll go to the configuration, and this is where we control our top layer and our function layer. If you want to assign any key a different value, this is just like VIA. You simply click the key and change the value. It updates on the fly, no need to save or anything like that. You can also change your function layouts for your RGB or your lighting or anything like that. This is where you'll do that. Next up is the macro manager. This is where you record your macros. If you have other macros you want to import, if you create some macros you want to export, you can do all that here. After that, we head over to lighting. This is all your pre-installed lighting. This is everything the keyboard comes with. You can now adjust it as well. You can change the colors, the brightness, the speed, timeout timers, and direction, left, right, up, down, depending on which one you select. Next will be per key RGB. You can simply select a key and assign it a color. You can select a group of keys and assign them a color. You can select pretty much anything and you just hit application. I think it should say apply, but application's good, I guess. Yeah, application's good. If you want to check the number row, there's a default setting for that, and the WASD has a default setting as well. If you want to change any config files or make new ones, the top bar is your friend. Next, you go over to your custom lighting modes. This is where you can kind of design your own, but not really your own. You can also change the color patterns in here. It's kind of like just like the other one, except different a little bit. And then lastly, we have our music mode. This is where you'll change your adjustable lighting to all your RGB to kind of react to the sound that's played through your computer. whether it's music, live streams, or anything like that. I don't really like this. I don't want it listening to what I'm doing to make my keyboard react. But if this is your thing, this is where you'll do it. And that's a brief overview of the software. Let's jump to the actual keyboard itself and look at the RGB and function keys. All right, now that we've dimmed our studio lighting, we're gonna go ahead and have our keyboard plugged in. And you'll first notice there's no RGB. We do type and verify that it is plugged in and it is working, but you oddly gotta turn the on switch on for the RGB to turn on. That's something new. I don't think I've ever seen that before. I don't know if it's a feature I like or dislike, but as you can see here, the RGB is on and you can adjust the brightness as you go. In dim lighting, this is what you're met with. And then when the lighting is off, this is what you're met with. Honestly, it's not bad. It's not the brightest in the world that I've seen, but it's also nowhere even close to the dimmest I've seen. If we use the function \, we can go ahead and cycle through a bunch of pre-installed RGB settings. This is everything in the software menu we just seen, but it's already pre-programmed to the keyboard itself. If we use the function delete key, we can select a color in every one of the modes that you select. So you can find one on the fly that you like and it'll save it. And that's what it'll be set as. But now that we've seen our RGB and we reviewed our software and built our keyboard, last thing we need to do is go ahead and hear how it sounds. And after, we'll go ahead and talk about it. All right, now that we've built it, heard it, tried it, seen it, let's talk about the good and the not good. Starting with the good, it's affordable and beginner friendly. There's a ton of foam included. There's no tools really required to open it up. It's hot swappable, south facing RGB, and it has lube stabs. Okay, granted, the stabs could be retuned as you heard, but they are lubed and that's not always the case. But moving to the not good, is it missing a battery? Who knows? The world may never know. Okay, honestly, they didn't advertise it coming with a battery, but the silicone hole is for sure for a battery. Please fix that. Now, I couldn't get the wireless to connect for the life of me. Don't know if it's computer side, software side, keyboard side, but the wireless just didn't work for me. It's very light and thin, and this is going to be a must-have foam build. Like, it'll be too nasty without foam. Also, with it being light and thin, it might damage if you drop it, and I wouldn't really travel with it. Lastly, the budget board controversy. Now, when I say controversy, I don't mean a super serious one, but it's something that I hear more and more, and I want to talk about it. And that's the people that say that budget keyboards are e-waste, or they just belong in the trash. And honestly, I really don't like that stance. Because you have a $500 budget doesn't mean everybody has a $500 budget on a keyboard. Nor are people confident in getting into a hobby where the entry is $500 for a keyboard. Now, I am exaggerating at $500, but there are many keyboards that cost $500 plus. It's a simple fact of this needs to be a hobby for everybody. The more people we have in the hobby, the more we can create amazing things. The more companies are willing to innovate and spend money on R&D, and the more we can do amazing and fun and creative things. There will always be bad products, and it's our job to figure out what the bad products are so we don't recommend those, and we steer people clear when they're getting into the hobby. But stamping your stamp of this is e-waste on everything that's under your budget is really, really lame. and it kind of sucks to see. So for me, to bring a positive note on it, I'm going to say I support the budget keyboard. I think it's from a cool company that's doing cool things. I think if it's a budget friendly option that checks all your boxes, why not go for it? Why not love it? It's for you, and as long as you love it, then hey, who cares? If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening to my rant. I just had to get it out. If you want to check out the keyboard or anything else in this video, the descriptions will be in the links below. They do help out the channel. And with that said, as always, thank you for watching, and keep keyboarding.